What are we saying? About that time? Stand for the prayer, please.
Yes, sir. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day that you've given to us. We thank you for the chance to come before you to do your work for the community. We ask your blessing upon us, ask your direction within our lives. Heavenly Father, we ask you to bless each family here represented. Now, Father, keep us, guide and direct us. Keep our country safe from harm. In your Son, Jesus Christ's name, we humbly pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor Holmes, for that prayer. And before we, always before we start our meeting, there's a few instructions. And there, I will go over these instructions. There's a conference line has been set up, and the number is 1-917-900-1022. The access code is 32347. This is not a toll-free number. You may be subject to long-distance charges according to your long-distance plan. When the chairperson open the meeting for public comments, please follow the instructions. Dial 5. The moderator will unmute your line when it's your turn to speak and notify you by announcing the last 4 digits of your telephone number. Please announce your name and address. You will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes. Any person wishing to address the board regarding an agenda item will be given 3 minutes for comment. And the commenter may only speak once to any item. And from with that, those are the instructions that I have for you. We will go to approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
And I have one thing there, sorry, but on 9A, there's a typo, and I just want to mention it because it is kind of an important number. It says an approval of the release of the fiscal year 30-32 budgeted funds for TCDA, and I think they're requesting 2021. It's this year, isn't it? The current year y'all are requesting?
Correct.
Yes, so that should be 2021, and that's just, I mentioned this because it is important there to get that right. So we're changing that to 2020.
3032 to 2021. Is that what we're saying? Good.
And then,
Do you have a motion? Got a second? All in favor? Okay. All right, we'll go to the consent agenda. Is there anything on the consent agenda you want to take off? Vote is good.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We go on to item number 10, board to receive request or proposal, RFP for the Taylor County Fire Station 2, set for this date at 9 a.m. or soon thereafter as possible.
So what you should be receiving is we've done 3 submissions that are qualifications. This is a design build project, so this is the first of the 2 phases. What we'll do is we will propose to have a selection committee that will review these qualifications. If need be, we will shortlist this to 3 or less, and then we will notify those individuals to then in turn submit a price. And it's not until then that we actually have a dollar value. So this is a design build, so it's qualifications first, and then once you get a qualified team, that's when they submit an actual price. And the reason is we don't want every one of them to go through that laborious effort when we may determine that they're not necessarily the best qualified for the job.
Okay.
I will say in the proposal, they have to make the assertion that there is no relationship or interest involvement in any of the companies from any of the board members. I would ask that you guys also do the same, once we read them. And we've gone through the three names, just if you will, just make sure that you don't have any interest or relationships or anything with any of those firms.
We need to declare that now?
No, sir, you don't know who it is yet, so he's gonna read the three, and then once they read the three, just make that, declaration, please.
Okay.
So the first bid is from LMC Steel of O'Brien, Florida. And as you said, there was nothing to.
No, sir, it's just qualifications right now.
All right, so just qualifications, so. Let's make sure we got their packets in there. So again, I've got MC Steel of O'Brien, Florida.
The selection committee will be myself, Chief Dan Castle, and Dana Griner, the building official.
All right, and the next one is Ram Construction and Development from Midway, Florida. The second proposal. And then the third proposal is BBI Construction Management, and they're out of Greenville, Florida.
Gainesville.
Greenville.
You said Florida.
I'm sorry, Gainesville. I'm sorry, you're out, Gainesville, Florida. There's the three that we received.
So we'll leave one version with the clerk, we'll take the rest and evaluate that from the selection committee, and then we will return back to you guys. If we feel that there is a reason to make presentations, we'll schedule that. If not, we'll just go based on the written qualifications. The proposal package is pretty thorough as far as what they are required to submit, as well as how that will be evaluated. So we took care of that on the front end, just to make it easier on the back.
Okay.
Alright.
Okay.
We'll hopefully return to you soon with a recommendation of award based on price.
Now, when do we declare we're not related?
I would say now.
Okay. Out of the three, in relation?
I'm not related, don't know them, and have no personal gain from this.
The only one I would say that you might have is, and I'm not sure of the construction, the format of the project team, but Heath Ann used to be with Ram Construction. So I'd have to look at the organizational chart just to kind of figure some of that out, but
Who?
Heath Ann used to, I mean, I know he was a year or two ahead of me in school. That was the only one that I was nervous about.
I know what otherwise.
Okay. As long as we're in that shape, we're good.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
We go to public request number 11. David Jaworski, Government Services Group, to discuss PIA Zoom, a request for the Florida Housing Finance Corporation for SHIP CARES Act reimbursement.
He's actually on the phone. It's not via Zoom, but, he's on the phone and he's unmuted.
Okay. Mr. David?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ms. LaWanda, I apologize for not being there in person today, but as LaWanda, you know, I'm recovering from COVID, and Jay's out today for medical procedure. Otherwise, we would be there in person today, so please accept my apologies. We have been in contact with the Florida Housing Finance Corporation. In the most recent audit of the funds that were used for, we call it the SHIP, not SHIP, the coronavirus relief funds, the initial documentation that we GSG has provided the Florida Housing Finance Corporation, was accepted as is. After subsequent to GSG providing information, Florida Housing Finance Corporation hired a third-party vendor to conduct additional audits. As part of the additional audits, they did come up with a finding, and the finding is what has been presented to you in the form of a letter from the Florida Housing Finance Corporation. And as of last week, GSG has still been in contact with Florida Housing Finance Corporation, with a gentleman by the name of Mr. Russell Polzer. And we did present to Mr. Polzer that the files were reviewed and accepted by Florida Housing, although this issue did come up with the consultant. And we did ask the question, since we provide the same documentation, would the county still have to go through and provide the reimbursement, the reclaimed funds, and the last response that we had gotten is that Florida Housing Finance Corporation would be discussing this internally, and while we have not heard back from them at this point, I think it's probably wise to accept the report as is, pending the final determination from Florida Housing, and then if Florida Housing issues a final determination of our question, then the funds could be released back to the state. But at this point, we're still in, discussions with Florida Housing as it relates to the issue that came up during the compliance monitoring.
Okay. Is that your report?
No, sir. The report actually came from the Florida Housing Finance Corporation. It was a two-page letter addressed to you dated July 4th of 2021.
Okay. And that's a reimbursement to the SHIP program?
Well, it's kind of like the SHIP program, but it was the Coronavirus Relief Fund program, what we had referred to as the SHIP Not SHIP program during last year's CARES Act program. This is the program that Florida Housing utilized the SHIP infrastructure to, to provide assistance to individuals within Taylor County and other counties in the state of Florida.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you for that. Mr. London, your comments?
Well, so where this leaves us is that the county is responsible for submitting $2,951.86 back to Florida Housing Finance Corporation for the error that was made. And perhaps, Mr. Jahowski, could you explain to the board, how this was overlooked and how this error was made so we all understand a little better?
Yeah, so I believe that the issue of the question cost came in from that there was an additional home address for where there were utility expenses as related to a home-based business, and it was funds for the partial for the utility expenses and for the mortgage expenses that the external auditor felt that was not an appropriate or an allowable expense. And this was something that had been provisionally approved by Florida Housing Finance Corporation when we initially sent all the documents to them. But upon further review from the external auditor, they believed that there was those expenses were not allowable. The county did not concur with the recommendation from the auditor, but essentially the individual actually had provided documentation for assistance above what was actually provided. But in terms of the calculation, in terms of the items that were included by the team, in terms of developing the amount for the allowable calculation, the auditor disallowed a couple of the items related to, utilities and the other business expenses, and those were deemed to be unallowable, in their opinion.
Yes.
Didn't we say those funds have been moved to the general fund? Would that be where it's
This is a
reimbursed?
different program.
So where would these funds need to be reimbursed from?
Dave, I don't believe that we have any funding available in the ship not ship program, is that correct? Anything that was not expended, was returned, correct?
Correct. Anything that was not expended was returned, per the federal guidelines, you're not allowed to use federal dollars to reimburse essentially the clawback, for what they consider to be non-approved items, so those monies would need to come from the general fund. There may be other dollars that you have at your disposal within the general fund, something that's undesignated or a contingency account that would be used to, reimburse these funds with, including, the recommended 10% set aside for reserve for the CARES program dollars, since those expenses were reimbursed, using personnel costs, those dollars are now unrestricted within your general fund as well.
Okay.
But that's something that you would want to confirm with, Ms. Welch in the clerk's office.
I don't believe that the county should be responsible for this almost $3,000. We heard this organization, GSG, to take the time to review and approve these applications, so I don't believe that burden lies with us. We should not be responsible. If anybody, GSG should have to return this money, not us.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, is there any further explanation needed?
And I'd like to hear from him, Mr. Jarkowski, of his response to what I just said.
Well, our response is that in the agreement that you had signed with the state of Florida, final determination is made by the U.S. Treasury. So GSG is in an advisory position. We can only recommend, we do not actually approve. We can provide recommendations of approval that are subject to the review of Florida Housing Finance Corporation. And similar to the contract, the agreement that you signed with Florida Division of Emergency Management is that even if the division provisionally approves expenses that are later deemed to be unallowable by the cognizant agency, those are the responsibilities of the county. So while we do our best to outline what we believe to be an allowable expense, we recommend those based upon our understanding of the program guidelines. And as such, we don't actually make the final approval. That's something that's done by the state and or the U.S. Treasury. So that's not something that GSG or any other firm that you would work with as an advisor would be responsible for. What you are requesting is the reimbursement to be made from our firm. I mean, we provide insight and guidance, but the final determination is held by the county, and that's not something that can be provided to a third party. And that's outlined in the agreements that the county actually signs with the state regarding any type of grant program.
Okay, I have a hard time grasping that. You don't feel like you have any responsibility?
Our responsibility was to review the documentation that was provided and to review it according to the rules as we understood them. And that's what we did.
Mr. Bishop, could you add anything to that?
Well, my suggestion would be that, is there some way to appeal this such that, we wouldn't have, that'd be one way to do it. Let's see if there's an appeal process. That's first. And then secondly, you know, when you're in an advisory position, if you don't take care of business, then I don't know that we're responsible.
Okay,
So is there an appeal process?
So as I,
is there an appeal process, Mr. David Jaworski?
well, that's essentially what, we had referred to. I don't know if there's a formal appeals process, but Jay has appealed, Jay Mosley from GSG has appealed the decision and did raise it to Mr. Polzer at the Florida Housing Finance Corporation, for the Florida Housing Finance Corporation to review and discuss that internally. So I don't think that there's a formal appeals process, but we have appealed the decision that was made by the third party that has it by Florida Housing Finance Corporation.
Well, I'm a firm believer in begging and pleading.
Did you hear that comment?
No, sir, I did not.
We are a firm believer in begging and pleading for this to be overturned. Do your corporation know anything about that?
I again apologize, I did not understand the question. Are we a firm believer in what?
Begging and pleading. Hey, we done the best we could with what we had to do it with.
Mr. Chairperson,
Well, that's what we're doing right now
Okay.
with Mr. Polzer.
Okay, so we don't have a fine.
So I think the question is, Florida Housing Corporation is requesting that payment be made by the county, and I believe they wanted it by yesterday, so that would be, you know, as soon as we could issue the check. I don't know if it's possible if we reach out to Florida Housing Corporation, if they will waiver that request upon final review, or if they will ask us to submit the payment and wait for final review, and then possibly reimburse the county.
Well, how much do we owe our advisor?
I believe everything, I don't believe we owe anything at this point. Is that correct, Mr. Jahowski? You've submitted final
That
payment,
is correct.
final invoicing?
You know what I'm talking about then? Well, again, are there any penalties for not getting the money to them on time?
I don't see that mentioned in the letter. Mr. Jahowski, are you aware of any penalties that could be imposed?
I am not aware of any at this point. Essentially, this is a brand new program, so, as I said, I'm not aware of any specific penalties that Florida Housing would be able to apply and above and beyond what they've already requested.
You mentioned you have already appealed the process. Wouldn't that void any penalties? Once you've already put an appeal in?
Well, it might delay them, but if you lose the appeal, then you very well might pay penalties if there are some, or interest involved, and of course, he's told us that he's not aware of that. Another alternative you could do, is you could go ahead and pay it and seek reimbursement from,
GSG or whoever.
You can seek it.
That wouldn't risk any penalty then, other than the fact you might not recoup your money.
I didn't hear you, sir.
I say that will take away any risk of penalty if you did that last step.
It could, but then again, there's no guarantee that you're gonna get your money back from these folks.
So, Mr. Jahowski, why wouldn't, if there was a deadline to pay, why wouldn't you guys go ahead and pay even during the appeal? And then if you win the appeal, ask for your money back. If you lose the appeal, then come to the county for the money. If that's right.
Because that would make this a contingency fee-based contract that would be then our fees would be significantly higher than they are right now. Because if you were asking our firm or any other firm to take on the level of risk associated with the project, the fees would be higher than what the maximum that you can recoup under the grant program. I'm not aware of any firm that would take on that level of risk for two reasons. One, we would have to be named as a subrecipient under the program, and our relationship under the program is a contractor that's outlined within the federal guidelines. And then the second issue is that the county cannot defer its obligation to a third party. The county, in the end, is the one that approved any and all of the reimbursement requests. All of the risks were clearly outlined, and from the beginning of the program, we had issued over $300,000 worth of reimbursements and payments to individuals within the county. So this one payment of $2,700 is significantly low, probably compared to the average of what you typically see in a disallowance rate in any program. As a former auditor, you can always find issues with any and all applications. So as we said, we did the best that we could given the time constraints, given the fact that this was a brand new program that nobody had administered prior. And we have gone the additional step of appealing the decision and opening up an additional level of communication at our expense with Florida Housing Finance Corporation. But as a general rule, we're not allowed to pay for assessments that are made back to the county or on behalf of our clients. That's not something that I'm aware that we've ever done.
Well, my suggestion that is the board notify you that we expect you to notify your errors and omissions liability insurance, and that we pay it and we'll seek our redress. Y'all follow what I'm saying?
I follow exactly what you said. We pay it and then we try to recoup our costs from it.
Yes.
The liability insurance.
Okay. Mr. Chair, we've done a lot of business with this company, and, perhaps we need to look for another company. I'm not sure I can vote to use this company, GSG, again, under these circumstances. There's other people that offer the same services.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry that you'll feel that way. I think we did an extraordinary job given the constraints and helped the county get over $4 million worth of assistance into the community. And what we're talking about here is a $2,300 request for reimbursement that may eventually get waived by Florida Housing Finance Corporation. But I understand where you're coming from, and if you would like for me to reach out to our finance director to notify her that you intend to go through the errors and omissions part of our insurance policy, I'd be happy to initiate that conversation.
Okay, that's what I think we should do, you should do.
I believe this amount says
Okay.
$951, not
Yes.
23, isn't that right?
Yes,
I mean, I heard 23 and 27, but
it's
this
29.
says 295186.
Okay.
That's not a lot of, he says that's a small amount of money. Maybe it is to him, but to us, $3,000 is a lot of money right now.
Probably need a motion.
One each step.
I was going to ask our clerk, is this something that could be added to the invoices for this board meeting, if the board approves to pay it? Or would it?
Yes, I would say since it's on the agenda
Okay.
and they vote for it, we can pay it.
That needs to be paid out of the general fund, I think you said.
Paid out of the general fund contingency, yeah.
Okay.
So I have to make a motion motion to follow advice of council to pay this $2,951.86 out of the general fund, and also see, restitution, I guess we could say, through their insurance.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor? Aye. Okay. Okay, we go to number 12. Constitutional officers and governmental units, the board to consider appointment of 6 members to the Taylor Coastal Water and Sewer District. Board of Directors is agended by LaWanda.
I believe, you've received all of the applications, but I would like to review what I have on my list with our attorney, if that's possible, just to make sure you have everything on your list that I have on my list. I have William Rich, Thomas Picklider, Randy Hathcock, Tracy Singletary. There was an application from Howard Woods, but he subsequently withdrew that by email. Michael Lynn, Jody Griffiths, Mike Hunter, Gail Lundy, and Russ Davis. So we have a total of 9 applicants. Is that correct?
On what you provided here, I don't see Michael Lynn's name on this.
That's why I wanted to review it.
Do you have that application?
Let's see, we need to add Michael Lynn.
And determine, who are going to be replaced at the end of May 2022, and who's going to be replaced at the end of 2024.
That will be part of the process. So there are 6 openings, and the board will need to indicate, I imagine once the applicants are named, the appointments are made, which terms that they will serve.
Good, Mr. Chair. I got one question
Okay.
about Ms. Singletary. She's got these 2 boxes checked as no, are these required to be considered?
I believe that was an error. Because if you'll read her affirmation, doesn't it state that they do swear?
It says that she owns property, but it says that they don't live with me, so I didn't know if they were voters. And I tried to reach out, but I didn't succeed. Oh, I saw this.
She signed a statement,
I just
so,
saw the 2 boxes.
yes,
checked
sir.
out.
I'm assuming that's
So now-
an anomaly in the application. I believe when you generate the application that those 2 boxes are pre-checked, if you just
Okay.
look at it online, but she did sign the statement.
Yes, ma'am, I see.
How do you want to go through the process of how they rank the applicants?
Well, you rank them by, 1 is best, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay.
But this is 1 through 3.
Yeah, it said 1, 2, 3.
That's why I asked him to review it with y'all. So you would actually, you could rank all of the applications, there are 9 applicants, correct? So they would rank 1 through 9, and then the top 6 would be appointed to the board, and then the board would determine who serves which terms. Is that accurate?
1 being the number 1 person,
Yes.
2 being the second.
Yes. So you rank all the applicants, and then the top 6 would be chosen.
So, okay, you want 1 through 9?
Please.
All right.
And if you'll sign your score sheet.
Don't forget to sign the bottom of your, ballot. got them all, it's gonna take me a little while, this is higher math now, higher than usual. But, y'all wanna go ahead and do other business while
Move to item number 13. The board to consider approval of the Big Bend Water Authority 2021-2022 budget as agended by Mark Rippon.
Up for your consideration is our budget for the 2021-2022. Overall, water and sewer revenues, we went up a little bit as far as our projected revenue, 5% on water, 5% on sewer. Total for our operating revenue, about 11% increase. Personal services, we went up about 7%. Operating expenses went up the most at 34%. Totally, we're at, that's direct operating, and then our total operating expense went up about 9%, so we're in the process of tripling our capacity, we're at 50,000, we're in the, permitting stages right now for 150,000 gallon a day plant. Probably be breaking ground at the end of the year, so we're busy, very good. A lot of new hookups, water, sewer, it's crazy.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
If you don't mind me asking, how are y'all gonna finance?
We're getting funding, DEP funding, revolving fund, typically we're getting 80% grant. We got that project's projected at 5 million. We've got, what's gonna probably end up happening is we'll get, half of that initially, we're working for the other half. For 2.5 million is gonna be for the sewer plant expansion. We need about another 2.5 for hooking, basically septic tank, removal. So we're going to about 140 new customers. We targeted an area, we're going to, get those customers on board to, we'll remove the septic tanks, start generating, revenue from that new
Okay,
customer.
couple more questions. For an initial hookup, what does it cost, and then what's the monthly base charge?
The initial sewer is 65, water 6,500, water is 1,600. Base rate for water is 32, base rate for sewer is 42.
$74 a month.
Roughly, and change, yeah.
Thank
And what
you.
we do is we cap ours for residential at, up to 5,000 gallons for the sewer, because I'm kind of use that as a guideline, so the residential guy typically isn't gonna go above that 5,000 charge for sewer. That's what we're doing. We haven't raised rates for a while. I think next year I'm gonna push a little bit. The board was kind of reluctant because we are financially stable, but I see we need to start raising rates a little bit every year.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, if you would, Mark, I sit on this board, so can you speak some to the replacement with the meters and things that's going to try to, let's say, limit or minimize the waste and the water?
Yeah, we're right now in that process of, doing some meter replacement. We've had, we got a lot of old meters. I mean, we've got meters from the 60s and 70s, so they're old. So we are starting a little program. We actually are in the stages of, doing the whole system, but we're trying to get some funding for that. And we're in the design stage of that, replacing some of the old water, old concrete pipes
360, so we're gonna replace probably a couple miles of that, and then we're gonna replace the meters in the same time, so, I feel we're losing revenue on these old meters, so that's kind of my thing.
But if we can stipulate, that's also both sides of.
Yeah, both Dixie and Taylor.
Mutual agreement working between both counties and how this board is continuing to try to further that effort, minimize waste, and seek opportunity.
Yeah.
As far as talking about take these septic systems offline in flood prone areas, I believe that's.
Yeah, well, that's what, we're still working that river area at this point, and then we'll work our way inland, and we do have a lot of customers inland. But it's, you know, it's a little bit slower right now, we're targeting, it's easier to get the funding on the water side, when it's closer to water, it's easier to get the funding. But you gotta have, and this is what people, we either raise rates, or you gain new customers, that's how you survive, so, you got two options. Wasn't clear, that's why, that's my education on that.
I think some of the cost expenses, of course, we discussed was chemical, some costs
Yeah.
into those increases given.
Yeah, I mean, everything's going up. So far, our, you know, water, knock on wood, water quality is stable. It's stable, you know, you're all right, but when you start having issues, upgrading plants and stuff, it's not cheap, everything's so crazy. When we started this plant, I figured it would be in at $3 million, we're at $5 million now.
$5 million and going.
Yeah. That's why I'm kind of wondering if we kind of hold off a little bit, but.
Motion to approve this budget.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Go ahead. Good. Okay, we go to number 14. Commissioner motion to discuss, is that Root versus Taylor County or Booth versus Brooks? Which is Root? Root.
Versus Taylor County.
Okay, go ahead.
Y'all are familiar with the big project at Andrews Lake that we had issue with, where we redid the road. What Mr. John Gibbons that owns the property is willing to, sell a small parcel of land on that sharp curve to make that curve not so sharp and, move the fence over. And, it would, give us basically 30-foot road right there in that curve, and, would be Batesville, with a little bit of work, a little bit of lime rock added, we'll have enough road there, actually more than was there to start with, you know, as far as the width goes. And, it would take a lot of the angle out of that curve if we redid that curve. And, he's asking to, sell us a small piece there on that curve. And, basically, I looked at it and that would help a lot, it would issue, as far as the issue of the curve goes.
What's the issue with the curve? What's the issue with the curve? What's the problem?
It's just there's really no issue, we backed the log truck around it, but the thing was, it just, the fence is right up next to the road at the curve, and if it was to build, you know, if somebody was to put a flower bed or something inside that fence right there, you couldn't see somebody coming around the curve. So he's willing to sell it inside of that curve, and probably people can move the fence over, where we can,
Which portion of that are you gonna let over?
it's this sharp curve right here on the bottom,
Yeah,
you know?
I got you.
Which road, Commissioner, which road is this existing Lime Rock Road, if you will?
It's a Lime Rock Road there, you can see the, down at the bottom of the pitch of that curve is the one that we need to add a little more road in there.
Commissioner Moody, would this, eliminate our legal woes?
Well, I don't know if it'll eliminate the roots issue, but it will be a lot more road than was there to start with before they changed the footprint of the road, is what I'm saying.
I was ask, I was left with the impression that, you know, when you filmed the log truck making the turn through there and the residents, other residents are saying that they've seen a lot of big trucks with pump straw and all kind of things going in and out with with ease.
Right.
So I'm trying to figure out why we would do this other than it would kind of eliminate these legal
Yeah.
woes that we're
Well,
facing with
it's
it.
a safety issue on that sharp curve. If he had, for instance, in that bottom curve there, sharpest curve, if he had a flower bed right there by his fence, you wouldn't see somebody coming, you know, if he put azaleas out there or something, you couldn't see somebody coming around that curve. It's a safety issue on that curve.
But is that our responsibility?
Well,
If I could interject, Commissioner Moody. So the question at hand is, this is to facilitate settlement negotiations in the case of Robert and Belinda Root versus Taylor County. So what we're requesting is authorization from the board to negotiate the purchase of a small parcel of land from John Gibbons in order to secure a 30-foot wide right-of-way on the portion of Andrews Lake Road that lies immediately to the north of Mr. Gibbons' property, as well as to make minor improvements to the road in order to increase the width and line of sight. So, is that correct, Commissioner Moody? In a nutshell, that's what the request is, and that would be part of the settlement negotiation.
And who's gonna move the fence?
they gonna take, the fellow that built the fence is gonna move the fence. We won't have to pay them nothing to move the fence. Johnny sold them, John Gibbons the property. He said he would move the fence to our.
Driggers or the new owner?
Ma'am,
The Driggers or the new owner move the fence?
Driggers is gonna come back and move the fence for Mr. John Gibbons. He said he'd do that.
This is just footage in this curve, is that what?
To the inside of that curve on the bottom of the photo there.
Yes, sir. So it'd be on the east side of the curve, looking at this, if this north is.
It's actually on the east side of the curve.
And that's just to more or less improve the line of sight and safety issue, given what's going on there?
Yes, sir. And we own property on the west side of the curve. You'll see that square that shows it down there at the bottom of the picture there. We can widen that curve out a lot on both sides. If we get that property from him there, it'll widen it out on both
How much
sides.
we're talking about, how many acres?
Yeah, how much?
This footage looks to me
He
like.
wants $2,500 for the property, piece in that curve. And he wants the board to waive his $500 variance fee for him to build a garage closer to his property line. You've got that, supposed to build a garage 10 foot from the property line. That's the way the building code reads, but they do have a variance board that'll, you know, you can go through them and say, you know, I don't have much property, I need to put the garage closer to the property line. So he wants to put his garage between the house and the road right there on that curve, and he wants to do that. So actually, he's trying to work with us, and I feel like we need to work with the gentleman to get this issue behind us if possible.
Does this affect any of the other landowners around there? I mean, I had some calls from a couple of those landowners. By us taking on this additional piece, will that affect any of these?
It wouldn't affect them at all. The landowner on the north side of the road, they don't wanna do it, give none of their property.
Mhm.
They don't wanna have nothing to do with Mr. Root. They want this behind us,
Gotcha.
you know. I mean,
Mr. Bishop, could you respond to this?
Well, of course, I think it's a recommendation of the, insurance attorney that's representing us in this, along with me. I think my son went to the mediation, and this has been back and forth for probably a month and a half, right, Jim? It's again, one way out of this problem that we've had for many years. And it may not be the end of it, but it's probably a good way to try and to alleviate this and get this through. As long as it's not affecting anybody else, like Mr. Moody says, it would probably be, I'm sure it's a recommendation of the insurance attorney, Mr. Terry, who has been representing the county in this and done a really good job up to this point.
Is there any way that, a clause could be added to that if we agree to do this, that everything would be dropped, and there'd be no, future, litigation or something?
Well, I think, and Jim can correct me if I'm wrong, this is just a thing that we are offering, and if they don't go through with the rest of it, then it's all over with. I mean, then there's, we end up going to trial on it. So this is just one thing. They want to know whether in fact that y'all as a board are in agreement with this part, and it goes back to them, and then it's not a total settlement until it's a total settlement, if that makes sense.
We don't know.
Is this your recommendation that we do this?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
One question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Mr. Dudley, have you put your thoughts in on this mediation and this line of sight issue here on this curve? Is that ample footage? And is that a fair settlement for both sides, and does it address this issue of line of sight restriction?
Yes, with respect to the alignment, the drawing that you have before you is my drafting. And that is the tightest curve that you can, put in there based on the current specifications for that speed limit. So I matched the curve radius on the approaching one on the east or the west end, and then as you go to the north, I matched the same one to tie back into the Lime Rock.
So this proposed footage is in both of the bends of the curves then?
Well, obviously you have to start from a matched point and then proceed through to another match point. So that's what I did, and in the middle of those two, I made sure the radiuses were sufficient size.
Do you have, how many square feet is this?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
Half acre, quarter acre?
No, I don't think it's that much. If he's talking about an incremental piece on the east and south leg of that bend, it's square feet, it's not acres.
Okay.
But I will just say, I don't have anything to weigh in with respect to that, setback variance request. That's something new, I haven't looked at that.
Please.
Mr. Chair, I'll offer a motion that we accept this, proposal.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, have a motion and second. What do you got here? Okay. Go ahead.
Whenever y'all ready to go back on this, appointments, I'm ready to tell you what Amy said.
Okay.
All right, if it please the board, you have 5 that, you have that you would appoint, and then you have a tie on the 6th one, and I'll let y'all know, where we're at with regard to this. Appointed would be, Michael Lynn, Gail Lundy, Mike Hunter, Thomas Kicklider, and William Rich. Does that come to 5?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You have a tie between William Randy Hathcock, and Tracy Singletary. So there's a tie, there's a tiebreaker, and my suggestion would be you would rate that one to the one that you, of those 2, the one that you want, you put a 1, and the one that you didn't want, you put 2.
Do you want new forms?
I
Just for
could
those
not
two?
hear you.
Do you want new ballots just for those two? For the
Yes,
Tiebreaker?
yes, tiebreaker ballots.
While you're working on those, Mr. Bishop, we'll go ahead and you'll come bring it back to us.
Yes, sir.
Before item number 15, the board to consider approval of possible submission of a grant application to discuss options for the Florida Recreation Development Assistance Program fiscal year 2021-22 as agendaed by the grant writer.
She's on the line.
Okay. Who is it? Melanie? Melanie? Melanie, Ms. Cox?
Yeah, hey there, everybody.
Okay.
Hey there, everybody.
Hey.
As you know, in my agenda package, the FERDAP funding cycle, coming up, we can apply for up to $200,000 and request a waiver of match. And the agenda package is requesting that we move forward if you think you want to submit an application with the 2 public hearing process.
Yes. Okay.
I'd like to move, I say we move forward, we submitted, you know, the report complex, we did submit an application for funding for new softball field, a new softball field complex, which, you know, we were denied, didn't get any funding for a softball field. I think we did some pricing back earlier this year, it roughly, you know, $450,000, you know, for, you know, lights, scoreboards, irrigation system. So I would like to move forward with $200,000 for that grant to go towards this new softball field. And, you know, during our budget sessions, you know, maybe we potentially find, you know, the other 250, pull out of our budget somewhere.
Okay.
Yes, last year we were awarded a FERDAP grant for $200,000 for the sports complex, which is paying for your batting cages, the, repairs to the trail, the asphalt repairs, and to a shade covering on the playground and, the rubber mulch in the playground area. And then a few little miscellaneous things that we have to add in, like $500 for native vegetation to get those points. But last year we were awarded, like I said, a $200,000 grant through that program. And then we were awarded the $50,000 for Southside Park. This year you're only eligible for 1 application because you can only have 3 open grants with FERDAP, and we have 2 at this time.
And we wanted to be 2,000. Okay. Go ahead.
Now, is this the same one that we've got the $200,000 for Hodges Park? Is this?
No, ma'am, that's land and,
No,
land and water conservation.
No, the $200,000 for Hodges Park is the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant.
Okay.
Today, you know, we're getting a lot more traffic at these, you know, the complex, and, you know, these fields do get beat on, and we're doing some things within our T-Crab group to enhance tournament ball within our community, coming down the pipe. So an additional field would be of an assistance to make some of this stuff happen.
Commissioner, I'll support you on that, and again, I appreciate what you're doing on the T-Crab.
And it's county-owned property too, it's not public property. Okay?
You make a motion.
Second.
Yeah, I make a motion to move forward with this permit grant for $200,000.
And I say,
Motion second, all in favor? Okay, you got it.
Hey,
200,000.
Chairman Dan?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
We will need to add other elements to that to be competitive, but before your first public hearing, I will, calculate out how we can get all the points that we need to be competitive. It will be minor items in addition to the softball field. For example, we add, putting in a new picnic table, or putting in native vegetation, so we can draw down on all those points which make us competitive. And I'll figure that out for you before the next public hearing, to give you a general idea on what we need to include in the grant application that won't cost us very much.
Okay.
Melody, I have one question. This is in our 5-year CIP, but the funding that we originally thought we would need is much less than what we actually need. Do we need to make that change in our CIP and have it approved by the board, or
Yes.
is it sufficient just the way it is?
I would amend your CIP to show the maximum amount we need to justify the grant application.
Okay, and then the only other potential question we would have is the need for additional parking. And that may be something we need to look at as well.
I don't know with just one field that we would need additional parking at this point. If we had a fourth softball field, then obviously we would need to figure something out, but we just don't have the room. But I think with, that other open space that we're gonna have plenty of parking there, and if need be, I think maybe, we might create some space over by the recreational office, which is just across the street from the softball and baseball complex.
What we could do is, parking is a support facility, and it's pretty substantial points on that grant. We may just wanna say we're doing like a small little gravel type area, not asphalt it, but just have in your wheel stop. And you can claim that as points on the grant if you're just adding in, maybe even like 2 handicap spots. So you may wanna pinpoint a little small area where you might wanna make that adjustment, because that will get you some good points right there. And it's something you could do fairly cheaply.
Okay.
I asked Mr. Dudley, will that spacing line up with what we're saying with the third field and this potential for other field? And still allow for all the other potential activity?
I will say back in the past, when we have ran tournaments over there, that the third and fourth area for the fields up north of the softball, where you're gonna put one of these, has very much and very often been filled. And that's been my hesitation that I've usually expressed to Ms. LaWanda, that it is a very close and ample area for the parking that is needed during tournament times, if that's what our pursuit is. The overall complex plan does have in it, from its conception, a parking area in front of the administrative building, which is as soon as you come in. I will just caution you that it's very easy to say, hey, we'll stick in a little parking area. I'm not sure how much is enough to squeak by, but if you put anything that's substantial in and of itself, it's going to be a very noticeable cost item to do a parking area there. So if you feel that your tournaments are needed for a third field, which, and I know Gary's looking at me because he's got a lot of history in running brackets on fields. You can do a lot with what you have there now. If you put another one there, obviously you could probably roll another 5 teams or so within that bracket. Those 5 teams are going to bring people with them. So you can very easily overrun the area that you have for parking. With one field additional there, it makes it that much smaller. My comment to her has always been just be very aware of how you're going to affect your parking if you add another field that's only gonna make it worse. So just be aware of it, I say, and see if you practically think that you could run 30 teams in a bracket on a weekend. Could you physically put that many vehicles on that complex? Within reason of not making them walk a quarter of a mile.
Well, I think any tournament ball that we go to, I mean, we're used to walking a quarter mile at any complex we go to, really. I mean, as far as walking from the other side of the basketball courts, where we're gonna put that disc golf location. So, we're pretty well know we're gonna walk at any kind of tournament weekend or any complex that we go to. Now, on a regular rec seasons, I wouldn't see it being an issue. Now, for sure, in tournament ball, I would expect that the complex would fill up. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. At the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do, is fill the place up. So, parking is probably a little out of the norm, even a normal weekend of tournament, but I think that's probably to be expected.
Yeah, and my comments were coming from having to have run one of them out there, and, the logistics gets a little intense when you do it that way. And my comment wasn't with respect to rec ball, because I think you can accommodate that, staggering your game times as well. It's that influx of putting 20 teams on a roster to run brackets, and then now adding another field, which we know we could put at least 4, if not 5 more teams on top of that. And my comments are coming to you from the engineering perspective, to where my design guidelines tell me don't go any more than this typically from your parking to your destination.
Yeah, no, I appreciate
So that's my comment.
I appreciate that.
Kevin, how many parking spaces do we currently have? Do you know off the top of your head out there?
300 or so, somewhere in that ballpark, in between the main one in front of the soccer area, and then the north ones up there. I think it's around 300. And I want to say it was like 60 or so that was planned around in front of the admin building, is my best recollection. You might put one up there on the very northeast corner, but then you're going to route the people across the incoming road. So it's just kind of a pedestrian crosswalk type mentality there. That's one area. They're using it for staging materials, I believe, now, so you may have to relocate some of that, but you could, maybe put another 30 or so up in that area, something like that.
And usually what happens in these tournament ball, I mean, people got their game times that they show up, and so everybody's not necessarily hollering at one time. There's gonna be a few hours that there is gonna be a pretty packed place, but then you're given going on into the afternoon, folks start getting beat out of the tournament, so people start filtering out. So then you kind of start seeing people clearing out. So there is a period of time that's gonna be a pretty packed place, but I mean, they don't all show up at the same time, and they aren't all leaving at the same time, so.
Well, I can tell you, if you go to a football game anywhere out of the area, you sometimes walk a mile and a half to a football game.
Oh, yeah.
They have 13, 14,000, maybe 50,000 people there, and they park 2 miles away. Sometimes they have to catch a shuttle. People parking on side street, so. And it's not every day. You don't have that every day, so. Okay. What do I hear? Did I hear, did we vote on that? Okay. Ms. Melanie, you got anything else for us? John?
Ask again.
Ms. Melanie, you got anything else for us?
Thank you.
Okay,
No, sir, we're good.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Mr. Bishop, 16, the board to consider approval of draft opioid resolution presented by the county attorney.
Let me get to where that is. I was busy wanting to give you the results of the election.
Okay.
The person is, William, Randy Hathcock.
And now I think the board needs to determine the terms that they serve, correct?
Right.
Do they have a set of bylaws that they operate by?
No, sir, the board, I think per our ordinance, the board will have to make that determination as far as the unexpired terms. So, there are 3 terms, that end May of 2022, and 3 terms that end May of 2024. So you'll make, obviously, 3, appointments for, 1 year and 3 appointments for 3 years.
So the date again was what, May of 22?
And May of 24.
So 2 for the, May of 24 and 1 for.
No, 3 for
Three.
each. 3 for, okay.
Thank you.
Sorry.
When do we need to do that? Need to do it now?
I would say so, yes, sir.
Do we make a recommendation, or do we just?
I don't know if you want to, if you want the top 3 to serve a longer, no. So, one by
I
one?
wouldn't do that.
Okay.
Do we need to give another?
Y'all need to pick 3 that will be up at 2022 and 3 that would be up 2024.
We need a ballot.
Well, I'm going to, these are here for anybody that wants to look at them. This is, the ballots and also, our cycling. I'm gonna give them to the clerk. Get them out of my hand. If y'all wanna go on while she's getting that.
Yes, sir. We go over here with 16.
Right, this is you want to read it, the whole thing, or you wanna read it?
How long?
It's got a title.
Got a title?
It does have a title, yeah.
Okay, go ahead. We'll title.
The motion is,
Second.
Motion is second, read for title only. All in favor? Okay.
a resolution authorizing Taylor County hereinto referred to as this governmental unit to join with the state of Florida and other governmental units as a participant in the Florida Memorandum of Understanding and formal agreements implementing a unified plan, and this is on the opioid, claim. And of course, my recommendation is to go ahead and pass this resolution and see what happens, and sometime we might get a check.
Motion to, approve the resolution.
Second.
Motion is second, all in favor? Aye. That's all you had for us?
That's all I had on that one, yes, sir. They keep sending us stuff, And boy, are they wordy.
Number 17, I think, the county administrator want to address that. The board to consider approval of budget transfers from the solid waste reserve as agenda by the county administrator. You give a minute and have this up.
I'll go do it, or she can come back.
We just need to write the dates.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, we just need to put the dates down by the ones, May 2022 on 3 and May 2024 on 3.
I think that would be the proper way to do that. I didn't see the ballot, so
Eight of them down there.
I think, Michael Lynn is one of the ones that he's not on this, so you probably need to write in at the bottom, or he's not on mine.
You want me to give you the 6 people again?
Okay. Just have to write in Michael Lynn.
Twenty 22 and 2024. Okay.
Three of each. Don't forget to sign the bottom, y'all.
You just want the 6 of them. 6 of them.
Right.
County Administrator, board to consider approval of the budget transfers from the solid waste reserve to the general fund.
Since, I looked back at some historical numbers, for fiscal years 1920 and 2021. In 2019, the average monthly expenditure for tipping fees was $27,003. In 2020, that number rose to $28,869, and currently we are averaging $30,345 a month for tipping fees. We budgeted $270,000, so I'm asking for a transfer from reserves for tipping fees for the remainder of the year, because I cannot transfer funds from other line items. It's just too difficult to predict what we'll expend until the end of the year. If we don't need all of that, obviously it would go back into reserves.
Motion to approve the transfer?
Second. Motion second, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Well, you, back there again.
Actually, I do not have any informational items.
No information, not. Okay. Comments and concerns from the public for non-agenda items.
Yes, sir.
We go to the next one, each commission.
Yes, sir, thank you to the staff for response with the order issues and the rains and mosquitoes. I've got to get used to that, still working on all the issues, so hats off to the staff for everybody's involvement.
Okay.
Yes. Wanda, could we, go back and invite our local pastors to come back, before COVID? We, had invited everyone, and of course, we had some regulars, but you might wanna just send a letter to all of them in Taylor County, inviting them to come and lead us in prayer. It's always nice to have the pastors to come. I enjoy seeing different ones come in. Also want to thank the volunteers, these people that applied for the water board. I'm sure that it's not going to be a piece of cake, but I appreciate the volunteers, as well as volunteers throughout the county. Without our volunteers, we would not accomplish what we accomplished. So all volunteers are greatly appreciated. Also, I'd like to thank staff for all your diligent work, especially during this budget time. It's a very laborious task, and that takes a lot of time, and I appreciate that. Also, it's an honor and a privilege for me to serve. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. Just for you, Mr. Holmes, Rev, I appreciate you.
Thanks, sir.
Okay. Then we appreciate staff as well as doing what they can do, everybody. It takes us all to make this go. It's no big eyes and little U's, it's all of us working together to try to make something good, okay?
I didn't ask to speak during comments and concerns because it was for non-agenda items, but this is related to the agenda item of selecting board members for Taylor Coastal. And to second what Commissioner Beagle said, and I'm sure the whole board feels this way, a lot of people that normally don't volunteer for boards, they've got a lot on their plate already, volunteered this time. And so I know I'm really appreciative to them and to you guys as well. And I think for the ones that didn't get selected, who are also very qualified, I'm gonna go and thank them, and I think the board will probably feel the same way, because you got some really good folks that normally wouldn't even put their name in that. Thank you.
And thank you.
Now, Mr. Bishop, before we go, you got those?
It's taking a little while here to do this one.
We're gonna have to do this again.
Y'all can just hang on for a minute.
Well, anyone from the public has anything for the good of the community? Okay.
Fill time.
Oh,
Mike Ryle, 3384 Slaughter Road. Just want to say that, the Florida Forest Festival Board has been working diligently this year. We're gonna have a festival after mostly taking last year off, although, I would say having been on the board since I think 2004 and being a volunteer since 97, although we only had 2 events last year, I lost more sleep over last year than I have had for every other festival combined. I was trying to decide what was best for the community, and sometimes deciding not doing something that's best. But we do plan to have a pretty normal festival this year, so look forward to that in October.
okay.
And thank you for what you do, we appreciate it.
Need a new ballot.
Just one, or do you need?
So you don't have my vote? No.
I know they had to have that.
I know. We gotta add it in. Or not. What's happened, y'all, is, one person was left out that's already been voted on this new ballot, so we're writing it in. And y'all know who it is.
in school, we didn't get a second chance, so they just failed us.
You're right.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. So I came up with Rich, 5. This was really a little different, figuring this one out, y'all. And what I did was I didn't have a summary, so I had to do my own summary here. And for 2022, what I did each one of y'all, and then I put each one of you listing on each person who voted for 2022. And it comes out that Rich will be 2022, Hathcock will be 2022, Kicklighter will be 2022. With regard to 2024, it will be Hunter, Lynn, and Lundy. And I'm gonna leave this, I'm gonna sign the bottom of this. Swear to you, I did the best I could. I'll date it. Anybody wants to look at it, and peruse it, certainly you're welcome to.
Okay. Do you have anything to come before the board?
Typically, you do a motion in second to didn't actually do the appointments before we adjourn.
Any part?
Yeah, we need a motion and a second to appoint these people to this term.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Favor?